Bonjour, bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Merci de nous regarder en direct sur OBS pour notre point de presse quotidien. Je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de concurrence aujourd'hui en ce qui concerne les événements médias. Nous sommes le vendredi 10 juillet. Nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire. Je commence comme chaque vendredi avec l'agenda de la présidente pour la semaine prochaine. Mercredi, après avoir présidé la réunion hebdomadaire du collège, la présidente prendra part au 15e sommet UE-Inde qui se déroulera par vidéoconférence. La présidente von der Leyen représentera l'Union européenne lors du sommet aux côtés du président du Conseil européen Charles Michel, tandis que l'Inde sera représentée par son Premier ministre, M. Modi. Le haut représentant vice-président Josep Borrell y participera également. Puis jeudi, la présidente se rendra à Madrid où elle participera à la cérémonie d'État en hommage aux victimes du Covid-19 et aux travailleurs de la santé, organisée par le roi d'Espagne aux côtés du Premier ministre, M. Sánchez, du président du Parlement européen, du président du Conseil européen et du haut représentant de l'UE et vice-président. De retour à Bruxelles dans l'après-midi et avant de participer à la réunion du Conseil européen du lendemain, la présidente participera au sommet du Parti populaire européen pré-conseil et rencontrera Igor Matović, Premier ministre de la Slovaquie. Then, tomorrow will mark the 25th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide. President von der Leyen, together with President of the European Council Charles Michel and the High Representative Vice President Josep Borrell, just issued a joint statement commemorating one of the darkest chapters of modern European history. You will find the statement on in our daily news. The President also recorded a video message which will be broadcast tomorrow. J'appelle maintenant Johannes pour une annonce sur l'économie.
Bonjour Eric, merci. Effectivement, une annonce sur l'économie numérique. Donc, à partir de ce dimanche 12 juillet, des nouvelles règles relatives aux relations entre les plateformes et les entreprises s'appliqueront. Pour permettre aux commerçants, plateformes en ligne et moteurs de recherche de tirer le meilleur parti de ces nouvelles règles, la Commission a publié aujourd'hui un guide pratique. Les nouvelles règles visent à rendre le domaine de l'économie en ligne plus équitable. Elles interdiront certaines pratiques déloyales comme la suspension sans raison des comptes clients. Elles garantiront une plus grande transparence en matière de classement pour les vendeurs et elles offriront des nouvelles possibilités de résolution des litiges et des plaintes. Également publiés aujourd'hui sont 3 rapports intermédiaires du groupe d'experts sur l'économie des plateformes en ligne. Ces rapports éclaireront notamment le travail de la Commission sur l'initiative majeure du paquet relatif aux services numériques qui sera, comme vous le savez tous, présenté en fin d'année. Nous avons plus d'informations, comme d'habitude, disponibles dans un communiqué de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Johannes. Then to conclude my announcements, please note that Executive Vice Presidents Valdis Dombrovskis and Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni will represent the Commission at today's informal Economic and Financial Affairs Council. Among other things, finance ministers will exchange views on the progress achieved on the measures taken to respond to the coronavirus pandemic at EU level. The Commission and the European Central Bank will present their assessment of the current economic situation. Ministers will also hold a discussion on the priorities to move ahead with the Capital Markets Union, including in terms of supporting the economic recovery. A virtual press conference with Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis will take place after the meeting. With that, we are ready to take your questions, and because of an agenda constraint of our External Affairs spokes, I would like to start, if you please, with External Affairs. So please only keep your hand raised if your question relates to External Affairs to start with. I give you a few seconds to adjust. Okay, Odile.
Hello, good morning. A very inspiring 3-day virtual India Global Week is taking place right now with a global reach of 5,000 participants, 250 speakers, and an engaging motto, India meets the world meets India. Given that India is the largest democracy in the world, given that in some sectors such as pharmaceuticals and manufacturing vaccines and other technologies is very performing, shouldn't the EU encourage EU companies and entrepreneurs to respond to President Modi's invitation to invest in India for global revival? Thank you.
Odile, thank you for your question. Indeed, as you know, we have a summit next week on the relationship between the European Union and India. This relationship is indeed a constructive one, and we will be looking forward to discussing with our Indian partners how to intensify our economic and investment relationship. Now, there will be a press conference after this summit, and therefore it will be a good opportunity to discuss the issue that you have now raised. Let us stay on international affairs. Lorne.
Yes, good afternoon, Lorne Cook, Associated Press. A question on the Serbia-Kosovo talks. I realize this is perhaps a little quick. There was a virtual meeting this morning involving the High Representative, and I wanted to see if there's anything that can be said about that at the moment, and then just to see how things are going for Sunday. Does it still look like the dialogue will go ahead as planned? Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, the video conference organized by President Macron and Chancellor Merkel is over, and both sides should be issuing information about that meeting very shortly, and after that we will issue more information about the arrangements for Sunday.
Thank you, Peter. Let's continue on the external front. Momchil. Momchil, we cannot hear you, Momchil. You seem to have an issue with your mic.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead. Oh. You have muted yourself. Please press speak again.
Now it's okay?
Yes.
Hello. Yes. Hello, good afternoon. Does the European Commission has comment about what's happening in Bulgaria during the last days? I mean the arrest of aides of the president of Bulgaria and the accusation of the president of Bulgaria against the prosecutors that they have put themselves in league with the mafia.
I'm sorry, but we said for the moment we are taking questions on the foreign affairs, so we will come back to you later on this question. So I assume, Ekrem, that your question is on foreign affairs.
Eric, are you speaking to me? Very well.
I don't know many other journalists who have the same first name, but yes, absolutely. I'm sorry for that.
I missed the name you spelled. Thank you, Eric. Peter, for quite some years we have been hearing the word from this house and across the street and the member states of the EU that saying, I'm paraphrasing here, that if Serbia and Kosovo reach an agreement, compromise, or what you call a legally binding agreement, then the EU pathway is cleared for both countries. And this leads to the questions which I haven't been having even to Berlin when I sent question 4 or 5 months ago. And the question is, relates to Kosovo. What kind of guarantees can this House and the 22 member states who have recognized Kosovo, what kind of guarantees can they offer to Kosovo that the 5 member countries who have not recognized will do so if a deal is reached?
Okay, Karim, thank you very much. I think we are jumping ahead of the events. Let's take it step by step in the proper sequence, and the proper sequence is to resume the dialogue. First step was already done today in Paris. We hope that there will be more steps following, and the idea of the dialogue is to achieve the normalization of the relations between Serbia and Kosovo. That's the most important thing. So everything will be negotiated in the process of the dialogue. And I would not jump ahead towards the issues you were mentioning. I will only mention one thing, that the recognition is in the end sovereign decision of each country. So that's, I mean, on the guarantees, I wouldn't be talking and discussing or speculating now on any kinds of guarantees, because the dialogue first needs to resume. And once it's resumed, then once the issues on the table are tackled step by step, the solutions and answers will be much clearer and maybe will offer themselves.
Thank you, Peter. Mose, you have the floor.
Hello. Thank you, Eric. Yes, I would also like to ask Peter about this meeting dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina on Sunday. And it's a question perhaps indirectly linked to what you said before in your announcement about the commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide. I haven't yet read the joint statement by the EU leaders, but as the Enlargement Commissioner said earlier this week, what happened is still an open wound in Western Balkans, and most countries, Serbia and also Croatia perhaps, have not come to terms with the past. And so my question is whether you think, Peter, this will be raised in the dialogue. Do you think that the recognition of indirect or direct responsibility for the genocide by Serbia is a condition, let's say, for normalization and also reconciliation, which is itself, as you know, as said several times, a condition for EU membership? Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. Actually, all this goes hand in hand. In the process of normalization, you deal with open issues. You try to find solutions, mutually agreeable solutions to all the open issues, including the open wounds. And overcoming the wounds of the past is one of the important parts of the process of normalization. So obviously, and this doesn't apply only to Serbia and Kosovo, by the way. It applies to the region and way beyond the region, but specifically on our question, of course, in the course of the talks on normalization, all these open issues should be tackled, and an agreeable solution agreed by both should be found, because this is the essence and this is what we understand under the normalization of the relations. Comprehensive normalization resulting in a legally binding agreement, and as a consequence, more stable region, good neighborly relations, and both partners able to focus on the future, how to make sure that their people can finally benefit from all the advantages of the European perspective, eventually of the membership in the European Union.
Thank you. I now move to Stefan. Or sorry. Yeah. Ekrem, you had a follow-up perhaps. Sorry. Ekrem? Okay, it does not seem to be the case, so we move to Stefan.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do, Ekrem. Go ahead.
Thank you. Too many buttons to push. As we are speaking about war crimes, if I can jump to the Kosovo situation. Yesterday we had a protest by the Kosovo War veterans against the latest charges against the president and several others. And the veterans have been having a mix of two requests, like one to undo the special court, and the other at the same time to amend the law. And on top of this, it's now 4 years that several NGOs of Kosovo Albanians have been calling for amending the law of the special court in The Hague in order the American prosecutor and his office, Jack Smith, can prosecute the war crimes committed by Serbia forces during the 2 years war. My question is, is this demand okay for the European Commission or the EU? So in order the same court can treat and tackle all crimes?
Peter.
Well, I wouldn't go into commenting on different calls from protests for changes of the legislation or institutional setup. I can only say that the European Union respects and supports the Special Prosecutor Office and Specialist Chambers, and there is a very sound legal basis for their operation, and if any changes would be taken up, they would be taken up in the consultation and in the dialogue with the partners in Kosovo. So on this, I would not comment on the individual demands by these groups you just mentioned.
Thank you. I now move to Stéphane. Stéphane Israël. Pardon. Merci.
Yes. Hello, Peter. On Sunday, concretely, what are the expectations? Is it just a starting point, or you expect some results? And what about the coordination with the US? I mean, it looks now very much like a competition between Washington and Brussels. Who gets the two sides together? Are you still coordinating, or is everybody doing his own thing? Thank you.
Thank you. I would only recall what I said yesterday and also at the start of this week when we were announcing the resumption of the dialogue. So the expectation is to finally resume the dialogue. The last meeting of dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina took place in November 2018. And we've been stressing all along since then that the status quo, meaning that nothing is moving, is untenable. So we hope that it will be possible with the meeting today, the video conference meeting in Paris, and the meeting and the exchanges and contacts on Sunday, that it will be possible to resume the dialogue. And I was also explaining before that this is not a one-off event. Dialogue is a process. So Sunday should be an important day for having this process back on track and then continue as the participants agree. So, but what is important is the resumption of the discussions and the work on normalization of the relations between Kosovo and Serbia, because only through this EU-facilitated dialogue they can make sure that the European aspirations and European future for their people can become a reality. On your second point, also we've been tackling this very often, mentioning the activities of the US or even other partners. This is not a beauty contest. The European Union has been there for Kosovo since the start, basically. We are facilitating the dialogue since it started in 2011. Over the last 20 years, we invested more than 1 billion euros. Actually, over the last decade, we invested over 1 billion euro in Kosovo. So this is, I think, very clear example of our commitment and our intentions to make sure that Kosovo and its people can benefit from its closeness to the European Union and get as close as it's possible. So we are not competing here because we prove our intention and our recognition of the ambitions of the people in Kosovo and in Balkans in general. We are underpinning it with our efforts, with concrete examples, and we are not jumping in occasionally, we are there always. And whoever can contribute into this process is welcome. And with the United States, we share the same objectives in the region, and we are happy to cooperate on many issues where we have common agenda, and the stabilization of the Balkans is common agenda. But there is only one EU-facilitated dialogue, and only through the EU-facilitated dialogue, the European aspirations of people in Kosovo, in Serbia, in the region can actually materialize.
Thank you. Stéphane, yes. Short follow-up, please, because we have to move on.
I mean, you said the 1 billion was invested. One could doubt whether this money was well invested. Do you think about taking another approach, or do you change the angle how to approach this dialogue to have maybe better results in the future? Thank you.
Again, I would say let's have a little bit of patience. Let's not jump ahead of the events. What is important at this stage is to get things moving. Taking into account everything what has been done in the past, everything what could be done for the future in order to move forward. Because that's the main thing, to resume and to move forward, not to have dialogue for the sake of the dialogue, but to have the dialogue for the sake of final agreement on a normalization of the relations between Serbia and Kosovo that is legally binding. So let's wait until Sunday and the following stages of this dialogue. But the most important thing at this stage, starting today in Paris, continuing in Brussels Sunday or next days afterwards, in various formats at different levels. The dialogue needs to resume and needs to tackle the issues on the table, looking forward and trying to achieve the final solution.
Thank you, Peter. I think we can close this chapter and move on to other external affairs related issues. Mira, I see that you have a question on Bolivia and the electoral observation mission. Is it going to Bolivia, and if yes, when? Nabila tells me that she has no specific elements at her disposal on this at the moment, so we will come back to you subsequently on this issue. Momshil, in the meantime, I just want to say on your question related to Bulgaria that, first of all, we do not comment on comments, as you know, and we do not comment as well on individual cases. So we have nothing to add to this in relation to the subject which you raised. I would now like to pass the floor to Alexander, who has a question on data protection and Schrems 2. Alexander, you have the floor.
Hello, hi. So my question is just ahead of the Schrems 2 ruling expected on Thursday by the ECJ. I wanted to know, because from what I understand, the Commission is already preparing for an outcome where the privacy shield is invalidated, or the standard contractual clauses that many companies have relied on so far are invalidated. My question is pretty much, you know, what kind of contingency plans the Commission is already have, especially what kind of, you know, I heard you're already preparing new SECs, and if you could say anything on that.
No, is the very short answer. Alexander, good try, and I understand that you would want us to start commenting on the judgment before it's made and how we will react to different areas, but you know this is really not a business we are in. So no, let us wait patiently for the judgment, and then we will see how we take it from there. Sorry for that. Francesco Garazio, you have the floor.
Yes, hi. Good morning. I have a question on the UK and vaccines. It seems that the UK has decided not to join the EU scheme to acquire vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines. So I just wanted to check with you whether you can confirm that, and whether you can comment on this, if it's true. For instance, is that going to make the EU scheme less effective? It can increase competition and then also prices on vaccines, given that you have now a competitor to acquire the same vaccines. And secondly, more in general, can you tell us where are we with the EU scheme? How many countries have joined the scheme to buy upfront COVID-19 vaccines? Is the initiative from Germany, France, Italy, and the Netherlands now over, or is still continuing in parallel with EU efforts? Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Francesco. Thank you, Peter. So the negotiations are ongoing at the moment with a series of vaccine producers. These are very intensive negotiations, which the Commission is carrying out on behalf of the different member states. You know that a certain number of countries had also initiated their own negotiations at the time. So these were two efforts which were going on initially in parallel, but which are being worked on. We are worked on together. The fact that the United Kingdom has apparently said that it would not join up to whatever scheme we are able, whatever contracts we are able to negotiate with these producers, is definitely not something which is going to influence our own negotiations with these producers. And we certainly have no comment to make on the fact on whether this would increase competition or not. We believe that the European Union, with its significant population, in any case represents an interesting market for the companies with which we are negotiating. Any other question on this or other issues? Oliver, I see you have a question on the MFF.
Yes. Hi. Do you hear me?
Hold on, we're going to raise the sound level here.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
We can hear you. So, my question is on the MFF. European Council President Michel, as you know, presented us with his new nego box, which sounds like a fancy Japanese takeaway dish, but it's basically something different and possibly a bit unpalatable for some member states. My concrete question would be, he only envisages the plastic tax as part of the own resources, and he basically dismissed everything else, especially the 4 own resources you presented 1 or 2 months ago to redeem the recovery fund as something where the Commission hasn't proposed exact numbers and it has to come up with concrete proposals. Why was your proposal on own resources so badly prepared that it was so easy for the European councils to simply basically kill it? Thank you.
I mean, I've heard many loaded questions in my career, but that one, Oliver, it's quite a good one. But first of all, I mean, I listened to the press conference as you did, and I do not recall that he only kept the plastics tax. I seem to recall, but it's very recent, and I was also preparing for today, that he also mentioned the ETS, and he also mentioned digital levy, as well as a carbon border adjustment mechanism in terms of future initiatives in this area. So I don't believe that the statement that you have made corresponds to what President Charles Michel has said. And secondly, we, as you know, we have had already on the table some proposals for new own resources, indeed, including the plastics one. And secondly, we have said that we would come forward with other proposals at a later stage in the process. Oliver, follow up.
Thank you, Eric, for this. Just to be more precise, he said the only thing that is operational now within the framework of, I mean, starting in 2021 is the plastic thing, which was already basically agreed in February. I mean, there's no controversy about it in the European Council anymore. But on all the others, he said they're asking the Commission to come up with concrete proposals, which you haven't done so far, so that this is something that at some point in the future, possibly maybe might be taken into consideration. And you and I both know that in plain English, this means that the European Council actually dismissed your proposals there. They said, well, you know, come up with some actual concrete legal projects, and then we can talk about it again.
Well, I'm afraid that I will have to disagree on the fact that you and I both understand the comments of the President of the European Council in the same way, Oliver. Let me just say the President has just ended his press conference. The nego box has just been presented, and therefore you will, I hope, give us time to analyze it in detail. We look forward to the discussions which are going to take place in the European Council next week in order to come to an agreement on all the elements of the package, and we will see what the result of that European Council is. The Commission believes that it has made both an ambitious proposal and a proposal that looks forward in a constructive manner to how to finance the expenditure and the loans that we propose in the context of Next Generation EU. I think there is ample scope for discussion. Let me remind you that the President of the European Council has presented his negotiating box for the European Council, and it's for the European Council as a whole, all the heads of state and government, to come to conclusions on that. So, any other questions Mose, we move to you.
That has launched this.
Sorry, Mose, you started speaking before having turned on your mic, so please start again.
Again. Okay. Today, the Director General of the World Health Organization announced, the new independent evaluation of the response to the crisis with the appointment of two co-chairs, as you know. And he said that now was the time for an honest reflection or self-reflection of what has happened in order to learn lessons learned. And apparently, they're not going to look for members of this independent panel. My question is to the Commission whether the Commission intends to participate or be represented in that panel. And perhaps another follow-up question would be if the Commission also thinks that it's also time for it itself somehow to launch some kind of evaluation or investigation of the response. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether we have information on, in fact, we don't at this stage, on our potential participation to the panel that you are mentioning. So we will have to come back to you on that. As far as reflection on the management of the crisis, of course, as I've said, we are still clearly in this crisis, both from a health point of view and from an economic point of view. So our focus is firmly on steering a course that will allow the European Union to navigate this crisis and come out of it as quickly as possible. We are obviously also learning the lessons from the initial phases of the crisis so as to be better prepared for the future. We will certainly come back to this in the near future. I advise you to stay tuned to see what will be the agenda of the college next week, which will probably look into indeed how to prepare for the future in case of a resurgence of the health crisis in Europe. Of course, the agenda has to be confirmed still, but this is on the liste des points prévus, as you know. So we have, of course, not waited to start learning the lessons and start taking steps in order to ensure that we can continue to respond as best as possible to the crisis as it unfolds. But there will certainly be, at a later point in time, an ample opportunity to reflect on how things have gone. Lorne.
Yes, it's a trade question, please. The EU Ombudsman has announced that she's going to take a look into some allegations that the Commission didn't live up to its obligations when it comes to the Mercosur trade agreement. So I just wanted to get a sense of your reaction to that and why perhaps an assessment that was done on it was only published just this week, kind of more than a year after the agreement was reached. And if at the same time you could just give me a little update on where we are in terms of the agreement ratification process, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to try to go to Daniel, but I understand he has some connection problems. No, you're there. Go ahead.
I'm here. I hope you can also hear me.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and hi, Lorne. First, regarding your first question, let me just clarify what we are talking about. This inquiry, it's about a specific issue related to the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. It's about the sustainable impact assessment study, so not about the agreement as such. And indeed, the European Ombudsman informed today the Commission that it will open an inquiry into a complaint filed by 5 civil society organizations on this study, that it's an independent study that was elaborated by the London School of Economics upon request of the Commission. The Ombudsman has formulated a series of detailed questions at which the Commission will look very carefully in order to provide the detailed replies that they merit, and we are confident that in these replies we will be able to demonstrate the sound administrative practices that we've followed in this case. However, let me also remind that we will of course engage with the Ombudsman, but let me remind that throughout the negotiations the Commission has carried out a comprehensive and continued process of civil society consultations with several meetings and repeated possibilities for civil society to provide input all along the negotiating process. And this was also the case in respect to this specific sustainable impact assessment, the draft version of which, covering the potential economic, social and environmental and human rights impacts of the trade agreement, was made publicly available this week. Also, as part of the engagement process of civil society that it aims to contribute to, we are holding a meeting with civil society organizations on the 22nd of July. I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit long, but I think it's worth explaining also that this is in fact the second sustainable impact assessment for this rather long negotiating process. And given the importance of the agreement and the length of this process, we decided to proceed to this step in order indeed to ensure transparency, inform the societal debate, and increase the knowledge for the negotiation that took place. Regarding the state of play of the discussions following the political agreement announced last year. So the legal scrubbing of the text of the agreement, of the core elements, has largely been concluded. However, there is a small number of issues that remain outstanding and are in the process of being finalized. We need to engage with our Mercosur partners to finalize this process. As far as we are concerned, this could and should be done sooner than later, and we are confident that Mercosur shares this ambition too.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there other questions for us today? That does not seem to be the case, so I wish you a relaxing weekend if you can, and look forward to seeing you on Monday. Thank you.